For the third time in 3 months, Bitcoin's hit a new all-time high price. Today, it also hit a new all-time high daily close. And with the week ending, we have a new all-time high weekly price and weekly close. So there's a lot of strength building and continuing to develop here for Bitcoin. Along with that, the S&P 500 metric also shows that we potentially have further to go, with the S&P 500 now clearly breaking out of a logarithmic downtrend. And like each of the previous occasions on a bull market for the S&P 500, Bitcoin also shows further strength to the upside. So there is a lot to cover in today's video. Like, subscribe if you are new to the channel. Thanks for joining me again, and your support if you've been here for a long time, covering Bitcoin, cryptos, the stock markets, precious metals, and the big one, the 18-year real estate cycle. This is Bitcoin's first 18-year real estate cycle in its history, the real estate cycle that has been around for over 200 years. So lots to get through as per usual. Okay, as I said in the intro, Bitcoin with new all-time high prices, new all-time high daily closes. This is the strength that we've been looking at now for weeks upon end, whereby the closing prices above $120,000 are basically the confirmation of new all-time high prices. I popped this in a couple of videos a few days ago, where the probabilities of these signals playing out would say that there is going to be a new all-time high price, and looking at the strength of the move. So today I've also got some of the price targets we want to look at for BTC as well to the upside. But in terms of the strength so far, this is exactly what we would want as bulls to see happen in the price. Now, eventually we're going to have to flip bearish, and usually when the price goes higher, that's a good time to start playing some sort of defense. So in today's video, I want to express my analysis and thoughts on trading that move, because at the end of the day, I suspect a lot of people want to be taking profits and they want to be trading and making money. So I've got a few things to look at today. Let profits run. So we have to let those things run as long as possible, and of course take losses quickly. Nobody went broke taking a profit, and bulls make money. That's obviously the upside. Bears make money, but pigs get slaughtered. So we don't want to be holding this thing all the way down just because some big names online have been telling us $500,000 Bitcoin, $300,000 Bitcoin, or someone gets in late and just expecting higher and higher prices. The best thing that we have to do is just follow the trends, follow the charts. And if we find other assets that are looking good to rotate into, that's especially where I think we should be heading. And if you want to learn more about navigating and holding a portfolio long term, check out TIA Premium. There's a link in the video description. In there, we discuss weekly with our members around our assets, our portfolios, and what we're doing with those positions, especially in bull markets and bear markets. Now, we also know there's a lot of hype around October and Q4, which is why I made a specific video about this a few days ago, doing the forecasting for the entire month of October and Q4. So I won't go into that in great detail here. If you want to watch it, the video is there. What I will mention is that Q4 is one of the highest percentage chances of finishing green, only second to the Q2, or the second quarter of the year. And we've seen pretty similar things here, where we had the consolidation through Q4, which typically leads to a strong, consolidation in Q3, which leads to a strong Q4. And more importantly, for the short term at least, is that October is usually one of the strongest months in history, 75%. It is at the moment at 75 because we're at 7% so far. If we turn this one off, it is basically one of the strongest here, 73, February being 78, and April being 71. So that then leads us to the rest of this cycle. We've got 73% for October, then you start to drop off for November and December. You can see here for the next couple of months, but that could still lead to a strong Q4, of course. You could see a run up and then a bit of a pullback for those next couple of months before you get to that early part of the following year, maybe even February. Now, in terms of the cycle, which is what we've been tracking, this is the 5 and the 10-year combined based on Gann's theory, where we look at repeating cycles, not your 4-year. So this is something entirely different to what the masses look at with their 4-year cycles. This is going back over hundreds of years of history across all markets. Now, the point with this is that we have been seeing repeating patterns here for BTC. There are two ways we can look at this. The first way that I've been showing you guys is the 5 and the 10 year from the starting date of the year, and just looking at that across. And that's what we've been tracking so far. You can see it's run up. We've got the breakouts as expected for October. You can see the red line that was showing us a bit of a breakout basically today, October 6th, and that broke through all those previous highs, and we've seen that breakout now. Now, of course, it looks like it's a stronger market, therefore we're seeing a breakout above the highs of earlier dates, but nonetheless, the pattern of the curve is what has led us to this point to suggest that we're going to see higher prices in the market. Now, of course, along with that, many other indicators, but in particular, the roadmap, the repeating cycles of history. And they've also shown further upside for October, a bit more of a jaggedy November, and same thing for December. So basically you can see it go sideways for a period, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, quick movement, and then it's a bit of a grind again and another quick movement. So most of the time, the market is trying to decide what it wants to do, and for a short period of time, that's where the movement happens. However, for October, you can see a lot of the month is just looking like it wants to go straight up, and that's typically because September has been that grind. And I think we've seen something similar this time. You can see the grind through September, week by week by week, it's up and down and basically a churn. And then that leads to the strong October. People try and jump in late, maybe November, December, and that's why you generally don't see the same sort of gains as what you see earlier on in the move, and that's just people catching the move late. We can also see that with the metrics. For example, the Google Trend Words, you can see they're just starting to tick up now, and I suspect this is going to increase provided Bitcoin remains where it is or continues to climb higher. More and more search volume coming through, people getting more interested in Bitcoin and in cryptocurrencies. But we haven't seen the same sort of volumes come through yet, which is still a good thing for the rest of this move. So I think we've still got to move higher, pull back, and then a final move, as we've discussed with the Elliott wave. But the daily exchange volume has still not broken out above these previous tops at $76 and $73 billion. And in each of the previous bull markets, you can see that we had a quiet period and then a breakout period. A quiet period, a breakout period, quiet period, got really, really quiet here 2 years ago. So that was September, October, basically exactly 2 years ago. And then the breakout occurred. And the breakout is typically shorter in time than the entire move down and the quiet period. So we've seen this move down and then the quiet period at the moment. The best thing about this is that we've seen higher lows, therefore more money in the game is slushing around for Bitcoin. Now, another positive for Bitcoin is where it is positioned against other assets. And we've seen silver going nuts and gold going crazy. So your precious metals. And like we talked about last week, Bitcoin versus silver has been in a downtrend since December. So now 9 months, silver has had better gains than Bitcoin. That's essentially all this is saying from a factual point of view. And you could argue that's even better gains. Well, you can't argue. From March 2024, Bitcoin has been down against silver. However, the double bottom that we watched last week was an area that we were expecting a bounce for Bitcoin to outpace silver and potentially also outpace gold from this minor double bottom here, but essentially a higher low as well. Now, if Bitcoin can break through these highs, roughly around 34 ounces to 36 ounces, then we should expect much bigger prices and bigger prices for Bitcoin and a pullback for gold and potentially for silver if it's able to break through about 3,200 ounces. They are the levels there. Otherwise, we'll potentially see a rally for Bitcoin into these levels and then a pullback, and then that energy might be sucked back to precious metals. And we know that's been happening over the last couple of months at least, whereby Bitcoin has been relatively quiet and a lot of that interest had gone back to precious metals. But I think now is the time that we're starting to see that change hands for a short term, which I think is still great for the upside on Bitcoin. Same deal for Bitcoin and the S&P 500. This has always been a really good sign that we've got further to go. Doesn't mean that we won't see any pullbacks here because we have definitely extended quite a bit here for the S&P 500. But the good news is, at least for the continuation of the bull market, is that the S&P 500 has broken through the logarithmic resistance. So that's the 2007 all-time high prior GFC top. Then you had the GFC, the global financial crisis, into the collapse. The low was in March 2009. So connecting the dots from very significant price points, being news events and things that have happened to us in the world. This was the bear market where these other 2 points are connected. You can see that the price came up, hit resistance, fell away again for the tariff collapse, almost back to that line that had been in there for 16 odd years, and since then has tested and broken out of it. So we could be into this blow off top phase right now, and at least that's what the charts are showing. We take it off logarithmic, you can see that it has had a fair bit of move to the upside. And when the S&P 500 has gone into overdrive, into another breakout past those highs, Bitcoin has generally followed suit, and Bitcoin typically tops out before the S&P 500. So this is going to be the next important point to note here. You can see from each of these bubbles, the orange line, or the boxes, the orange line is Bitcoin, the green line is the S&P 500. You can see, if I pull this over here to the top, Bitcoin topped first, similar timing to the NASDAQ, and then it came down. So the S&P 500 came down after that point. It topped after Bitcoin, came down after it there. You can see the S&P 500 also topped after Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's top there is orange, and S&P topped, Bitcoin came down, and of course the S&P also came down for a brief time, and then again in 2018. Same deal back in 2013. Bitcoin topped, S&P topped after that point. So now we're into that final stage where things are starting to trend higher together, and we're also seeing metals trend higher with the rest of the market, which I think is part of the 18-year cycle peak that we're going to see sometime for the US real estate and economic cycle in 2026 before the inevitable collapse from that point. Now, these are looking out months. What if you're only interested in Bitcoin for October and quarter 4? Well, there's still positive signs, still further signs for the upside. Our time counts and swing counts suggest that we've got between the 1 to 3 months to the upside from the breakout. If this is the last move, Bitcoin never puts in its longest monthly swing in the final move. You can see 5 months for the 2021 cycle, 5 months for the 2017 cycle. Back in 2013, it was only a couple of months here. You can see on the logarithmic, you've got 2 months, a pullback, and then a final month in the top. Whereas before the top, you can have long periods of monthly uptrends. 14 months was the move there in 2012 to 2013. You had 10 and 7 months in 2015, 2016, early 2017. And then in 2019 and 2020 to 2021, you had counts of 6 months, 5 months, 7 months. And it was only into the peak where you had the 5 months. So this cycle, we've seen 6 months up, 4 months up, and 4 months up. Therefore, we're potentially looking between 1 and 3 months if things are going to repeat like every single cycle previous for Bitcoin. That timing would also bring us into roughly October through to December, with a date here in the middle of around November because of the other monthly timeframes that we're looking at into the top. 35 to 37 months has typically been each of the prior cycles, low to high 35 months, low to high 35 months, low to high 37 months. So 36 months takes us to November, 37 would take us to December. So we're still looking for something within the next 1 to 3 months. And like we did with the previous video, the total counts now for October, the turning points after you get a nice break in October, 10 times out of 14, so 71% of the time, the move higher lasts from 0 months to 2 months. So this is the 0 month, the 2 months, or what the next month would be 1 being November. The next month after that would be 2 months being December. So there is a high chance that it does end in quarter 4, with an even higher chance of it ending in November, meaning the top in November. So that still gives us somewhere between 4 and 8 or so weeks. And if that isn't sounding very nice, well, I just have to remind you that the bull run has been going on for 3 years as when we get to November. So that's 3 years from the low. That is the low there in November 2022. And it is unfortunate that a lot of people are just hearing about it now or feeling like they have the confidence to invest into Bitcoin now. But this is typically what happens every single cycle, no matter which asset that people are trading in. So the best thing you can do is to remain with the market. You might hear me talk about that a lot, and that is invest in something, even if it's small, so that you can keep watching it day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year. Okay, still good things to go. We're also looking at the market sentiment. So another good sign here is that we haven't broken into extreme greed and remained there for too long. Even on this move to a new all-time high, the sentiment pulled back. So it's still looking relatively okay here for Bitcoin and cryptos. Ideally, we see it hold ground and put in a higher low somewhere in the 50s to 60s. This is on the Crypto Fear and Greed reading. And with the FOMO finder, it hasn't bounced to greed or FOMO yet. So it's still in a relatively stable position. Typically, we see lows when the FOMO finder hits panic or capitulation, just like we saw a couple of weeks ago, or even a week and a half ago. We saw around those lows where the market hit panic. And with those lows, we also saw the outflows. We saw huge outflows for Bitcoin with their ETFs. Now we're seeing big inflows, almost some of the highest we've seen in history. You can see probably within the top 5, maybe top 10 we just saw on Friday with those inflows. Therefore, we could be setting up for at least a stall in price, not a collapse, but at least a stall in price here. And we've also gone up for 10 days without a lower low. That is a general signal that the price has to at least pause, consolidate before it can move again. Otherwise, it has a correction. And this is based off Gann's rule, 7 to 10 days in the same direction of the trend at an extreme level, and an all-time high is an extreme level, generally would result in at least a pause in the price here to consolidate. Otherwise, there is a correction coming. But I know a lot of people are waiting for a correction as well to buy back in. So that's why I'm thinking maybe it just pauses at some higher prices here. Above 120K would be ideal for the bulls, and then it starts to rip again. And these pullbacks may only come in the space of a day or so, maybe 24 hours, maybe 36 hours, and then it can start moving again depending on the strength of the trend. The liquidations also set up for a significant low. You can see we had huge liquidations, the biggest in history back in the 22nd of September, and then also the 25th of September, right around the low price that we saw for Bitcoin, $108,000, and then of course the move higher. So the liquidations got rid of the leverage in the market, the huge long leverage, and then that allowed the price to eventually go higher. And while the Bitcoin price has been going higher, Microstrategy has also started to come back from these lows of $290. Now, it's not there yet, but it is getting close. The $360 level has been the restart price that I'm calling here for its next leg higher. Whether it gets to a new all-time high, another question to be answered. But as long as this continues to hold at these levels or even push that touch higher above $360 being the previous double bottom before it broke down, that could be another strong move for Bitcoin, whereby MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor have the necessary funds in their stock to sell off to go and buy more Bitcoin at these high prices. So that's the beauty about this now, is if it can get past 360 again, good signs. We've got a bit more money left in the tank there that they can dilute the shareholders and start to pump that back into BTC. Unless it gets over $460, no signs of new all-time highs. The 460 is really that level there. You can see the tops that have come in around 450 and the prior one here at 457. So still looking all right. In the meantime, we're seeing the altcoins pull back here. Now, it could be a part of several reasons. Obviously, Bitcoin's been going higher, but in particular, you've got the altcoins ETFs coming up in October as well. And they've been delayed at the moment with the government shutdown. So although we may see the ETFs come through, we've obviously got the shutdown for the US at the moment. It's just going to depend on when they're able to actually get these out. There were a few dates that had been put forward for around mid-October. So we're going to have to wait and see whether those dates continue to come through. In the meantime, the Bitcoin dominance has continued to climb higher. 60%, still looking at roughly around that target there, maybe slightly higher, but nonetheless, the Bitcoin dominance has continued to go higher. And with that, you've seen altcoins pull back against their Bitcoin pairings. Ethereum continued to pull back against its Bitcoin pairing. XRP puts in fresh lows against its Bitcoin pairing. You can see yesterday and today, it touched nearly a 3-month low against Bitcoin. Sol BTC, not too bad, bouncing off the 50%, but over the last few days has also pulled back. Sui also pulling back, not really breaking past any major resistance levels in these latest moves higher. Doesn't mean that their USD values have been affected, because again, Bitcoin has been going higher, so their USD values have continued to at least hold ground, which is good news there for XRP and for Solana, much higher here, so in a stronger position. And of course, Ethereum's also doing relatively well at 4,500 after putting in a 23% correction to that low there at $3,800. So if ETH is able to maintain here at 44 or above 44 or even above 41, that's going to be in a much stronger position. It looks like Ethereum has more room to run in this cycle. And if we look at an extension here for some price targets, provided this is the low at 3,800, we can look towards 5,600 being the 50% extension on this recent pretty significant rally. And then above that, you're looking roughly around 7,400. So if you have been following, we're watching that first target around 52. I think we'll get there this cycle. We have put in the new all-time high, and 52 really isn't that far away. So the next couple of points, $5,600, 6,000 being a psychological level, and then we're looking somewhere in that mid 7,000s. I don't know if we're going to get to this 10,000. I don't think we're going to do that this cycle. There is obviously a long time in this cycle that's already progressed. We've already gone over 3 years for Ethereum. So to get to that 10K from where it is now, a lot needs to be done in a very short period of time. And in that short period of time, Bitcoin's obviously stealing the spotlight as well. Nonetheless, I think there's still gains to be had. It's just we got to readjust where we think the end goal is. The total crypto market cap also holding out relatively well here, 1.15 trillion. So the overall game plan here is that there is further upside. I think there is some slight patience to be had with altcoins. As you could see from the charts, the BTC pairs had been stalling and in some cases slightly falling. The charts themselves are holding up relatively well through this stage of the market. And at the moment, it just seems like the spotlight again is on Bitcoin, as it has been for most of this cycle. And I think there is still further to go. We've seen this with the market cap. USDT market cap has continued to fall here, which is great signs, and getting very close to the 4.1% that we're waiting on for a breakdown so that we could see this break hopefully towards 3.7. So that's going to be much stronger move for the bull market. And we also know USDT is very weak in October. 100% hit rate for USDT dominance being red in October. Is it going to happen again? Hopefully it does for the bulls, of course. That would just mean more money flowing out into Bitcoin and cryptos, especially in a time when we know there is bigger market caps happening for these stablecoins, meaning more money is being printed in the crypto ecosystem. USDT and USDC dominance also in the red for October as well. So basically bigger pools and they having less dominance. So if there's more money there, it's going somewhere. They've got the market caps being printed and that money is flowing out into the markets. And that's exactly what we saw as we've been talking about now for weeks here on the channel. So there's a reminder, hit the like, subscribe to the channel so you continue to follow the journey here through the 18-year cycle and Bitcoin's first 18-year cycle. Question to you guys, where do you think max pain is for Bitcoin investors? It's relatively equal right now. Do you think we get the triple top and a collapse? Or do you think we get a massive rip higher? Where is max pain? Higher or lower for Bitcoin? I'll see you guys at the next video. Don't forget TIA Premium, link in the video description, and the reports coming out in the next 24 hours. Cheers again, guys. Peace out.